Electro is an intriguing character that always seems to have the worst luck in the world, and that extends to the movies as well, as at various points it seemed like Sam Raimi wanted to use him as one of his villains. He was in talks to appear in Spider-Man 3, Spider-Man 4, and Spider-Man 5, but he didn't appear in any of those movies. We would eventually get Electro in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, played by Jamie Foxx, who gave an interesting take on the character to say the least, but what if he had been in the Sam Raimi movies? So now, first of all, there's something I need to establish before we do this scenario. First of all, who is going to be playing Electro? Well, I'm going with Adrian Brody since he was on fire in the early 2000s, and he's really easy to sympathize with. And not to mention he's been on a lot of fan castings I've seen, so there you go. So we see Max Dillon as an electrical lineman, and we get a montage focusing on a hard day's work at a power grid. We then see him go home to find that his wife is packing up her things and leaving. She reveals that she's planning to leave him because, well, she wants someone who has more ambition in life, not someone like Max who's always been kind of stuck in his position and hasn't really made any true effort to get promoted. Then we then find out that his wife has actually been cheating on him with his best friend behind his back. So yeah, Max is a weird sort of parallel with Peter, who's also going through absolute hell in this movie at every turn. So we can see through Max's scenes that he and Peter really aren't all that different. They're both just regular New Yorkers that are just going through absolute hell right now. So now later on, we see Max returning to work, and for obvious reasons, he's still very much down in the dumps about his wife leaving him. And now his brother tries to help him get through it. He tries to comfort him and cheer him up, and it actually works. However, unfortunately, this all gets ruined, because then we see the fight between Spider-Man and Doc Ock that started at the bank is now spilled over to the power grid, and Max's brother nearly dies. And so Max has to go out of his way to try and rescue him because he's dangling for his life. However, that's when he and his brother both end up accidentally being knocked down by Doc Ock and Spider-Man, and his brother dies, though Max gains electrical-based powers. We get another excellent hospital horror type scene, but this time it's at the morgue. He wakes up and he kills all the workers by accident, since he's not used to his new powers yet. However, once he has his new powers, we see an anger form in him, an anger that's always been there, but he's tried to bury it down. And now he uses this new power to enact revenge on his former best friend, and he actually kills him. And now Spider-Man does try to stop him, but his powers fail him when he needs them the most. And so Electro nearly kills Spider-Man as well, because he hates Spider-Man now. He blames Spider-Man for the death of his brother, who he failed to save. So now later on, we see Max has actually gotten a lot more experience with his powers, and he even crafts himself a sort of containment suit to make sure that his powers don't get out of his control. And he actually teams up with Doc Ock, since he doesn't really have anywhere else to go, and they rob banks together while Spider-Man is still away. And now, Electro, depressingly, thinks that if he steals enough money, then his wife will think he's a success and come back to him, because he doesn't have anyone in his life left that loves him. His parents are dead, his brother is dead, and his wife is gone, and his best friend betrayed him. So now there's nobody left in his life that cares about him, and now he's desperate to get his wife to come back to him. So now during the third act, Spider-Man has to fight both Doc Ock and Electro on the train, and obviously against two villains, he doesn't stand that much of a chance. So he does end up being defeated and brought before Harry Osborn. However, Doc secretly instructs Electro to make sure that Harry actually kills Spider-Man so that he won't interfere with his fusion reaction plan. Now when Harry fails to do so, Electro comes in and tries to kill both of them, and we get an epic battle between Peter and Electro, which Peter ultimately wins by dousing him with a fire hose. However, a good portion of Osborn Manor does get destroyed in this fight, and the large portrait of Norman Osborn actually gets set on fire, and this only furthers Harry's hatred towards Spider-Man. And so now in Spider-Man 3, instead of the fight we got between Peter and Harry instead breaks Electro out of the maximum security prison that he's been kept in, since he needs someone with experience to help him fight Spider-Man. So now the pair both fight Peter at the same time, and in the end, Harry still gets amnesia like he did, while Electro once again is defeated by water. However, he manages to escape while Peter is occupied with bringing Harry to the hospital. So now without Harry as his partner, Electro decides to go it alone against Spider-Man, and since he knows that Spider-Man is Peter Parker, he decides to target Mary Jane Watson. However, this is when Peter has the black suit, so oh boy, you can bet that he's going to take this personally. So he takes the fight to the power grid, and he overloads him with electricity until he explodes, just like what happened to Electro in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. So yeah, that's basically my scenario for what if Electro had been in the Raimi-verse. So, yeah, I know that some of you guys are going to really hate it. I am not going to lie, I'm not that familiar with the Electro character. I don't really read comic books that often, so the only Electro I really have to go off of was in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I tried to do my best with the research and try to stick true to the character, who apparently is kind of a sad sack, who, you know, the people in his life just keep dying or leaving him. So I try to stay true to that, and I'm sorry if I screwed it up at all, because I also had to try and fit it into the story of Spider-Man 2, which I already think is a perfect movie, so I wanted to make sure that his story was good, but not so big that it would take away from the rest of the movie, if that makes sense. And yeah, I mean, I think Adrian Brody would make a good Electro, personally. I think he can do a lot of range. I think I can imagine him as an everyman, but I can also imagine him as someone who sticks out of a crowd. I can imagine him as both a sad sack and an optimistic person, and yeah, I can imagine him being the type of guy that would form bonds with the people he really cares about. Like bonds that are apparent when you see them talk to each other. So yeah, I just think Adrian Brody would actually make a very good Electro, honestly. Now, do I think he's necessary for these movies? No. I mean, I already said, I think Spider-Man 2 is perfect as it is. I think Doc Ock being the only villain is probably for the best in that movie. And as for Spider-Man 3, I mean, I tried to keep Electro's involvement in that movie to a minimum. And honestly, I know some of you are going to find the way I got rid of him to be a bit underwhelming, but I mean, I just thought it would make sense to get rid of him as quick as possible, just because, for one thing, Black Suit Peter wouldn't care that much about him, honestly. Like, Red Suit Peter, I think, would actually sympathize with him, but Black Suit Peter, I don't think would give a shit, especially if he kidnapped Mary Jane, like, just honestly. Not to mention, as I said, I'm still going off the idea that, like, Spider-Man 3 is already going to have 3 villains with the New Goblin, Sandman, and Venom, so I tried to get rid of Electro as quick as possible. You know, but still in a way that would still make sense to the story. So, yeah, that's just kind of the idea I had. I'm sure that some of you guys had different ideas, and that's perfectly okay. If you guys have different ideas, I'm more than willing to do a second version of this, but, I mean, this is just what I think would work the best. And I know some of you guys are especially going to hate the fact that I gave him a brother, because as far as I know, he doesn't have one in the comics, especially not one that dies because of a fight with Spider-Man. But the reason I did that is because I wanted to give him an understandable reason for hating Spider-Man, you know, but also a story like that would, you know, go hand in hand with the story of Spider-Man not being able to save everybody. Like when he saves the little girl from the burning building, he fails to save that poor soul trapped on the 4th floor. And yeah, I mean, that was because that might have been because he wasn't Spider-Man at that point. But still, I like the idea that even Spider-Man, you know, can't save everybody. You know, I like that idea, and I like the idea of Spider-Man's mistake causing somebody to go down a dark path. I think that would just make for a very compelling story, honestly. And honestly, I think Electro would be a really easy villain for Sam Raimi to do. I think that, you know, since Raimi wanted to do Electro, and he was a big fan of the Spider-Man comics, I honestly can't think of anybody better to bring Electro to the big screen. I think he would have done wonders with the character, and it's really sad he didn't get to show us what his, you know, vision for Electro might have been. But anyway, guys, let me know in the comments down below. Do you like this scenario I came up with, or do you think it's horseshit? Please let me know all about it in the comments down below. Also, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Give me more what if recommendations in the comments down below as well, whether that's about Spider-Man, Marvel, or anything else you can think of. Make sure to share this video with all of your friends and all your various social media platforms. And speaking of social media, don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Rinzler_Productions. And remember that I always upload a new video at 7 in the morning Eastern Standard Time every single day of the week. So make sure to hit that notification bell to stay informed about all future uploads. And I'll see all of you in the next video.